I've had a realization I have borderline personality disorder. Ain't that some shit? Well, you wouldn't know this about me, but I've actually had a lot of ideas for movies and shit, TV shows. Last night I was watching Batman Arkham, uh, and I came up with the Flying Ham Man, ham being an acronym for hard as a motherfucker, and it would be Batman, but in a realistic world and what's actually going on. Because in the Batman Arkham series, you get to see how much of a shithole Arkham is, or the Gotham City is, and you get to see how much of a shithole the Bowery is. Bowery being the poor district. And if Batman just paid his taxes, that wouldn't be a problem. Now, this is something really hard for upper middle class and wealthy people to understand, but poverty leads to crime. Okay? Desperate people do desperate things. Especially if you have a trust fund, you're completely incapable of understanding that because you really don't know what it's like to actually starve. You don't. And you never will, probably. So, in this world, you'd have a rich, entitled prick, self-righteous, believes he's in the right, and it would start with a socialist guy running for office, and he would see it and go, he wants me to pay taxes? I'll solve the crime problem on my own! And then he uses all of his money. He buys gadget, he buys like a full bulletproof suit, he buys steroids, starts working out, gets all jacked. You know, you get somebody like John Cena or somebody really fucking jacked, to be the Ham Man. And the Ham Man fucking, you know, just like Batman, you could even have him read Batman comics and literally believe in his self-righteousness he is Batman. And he has similar gadgets, whatever you could actually, like, the real world kind of, like, equivalent, because he's rich, he can afford them, and he'd have, like, a Tesla that came and picked him up like the Batmobile do, you know. And then he would set out on his one-man crusade to lower the crime rate, because the guy that's the socialist on TV is like, oh, if we spend on mental health, and if we start evaluating our taxes on housing, and we start rebuilding infrastructure, and we start and meanwhile this you know, start all these programs that help people, and we fix things, and Ham Man goes, no, suffering's good for them, it's good for them, you gotta keep hurting them, that's the only way, you just keep hurting them, you don't stop, no matter what. And you know, he's like Batman, his parents died when he was little, so he's the infinite victim, he's the victim in everything, because he had one bad experience and he never got over it. So he's like, and he has, instead of an Alfred, you give him like a bodacious chick with huge, threateningly huge tits. You know, a real fucking babe. Alright, so Ham Man sets out on his first adventure, catches like some guy selling drugs, like selling weed, and then he jumps down and he's like, I gotta take punks like you off the streets. And then he just proceeds to beat the shit out of the guy. Just really fuck him up. And he's beating the dude's screaming and crying. And he goes to the ER, right? And the guy ends up in the ER, which is, nobody wants to be in an ambulance. If you're poor, you don't want to be in an ambulance in the ER because you can end up losing 20 to 30 grand. I had a reaction to Zithromax. I had saved up $20,000 and I lost exactly $20,000 in the ER. Okay. So he fucks him up, breaks his arm, and remember, he has all this training because he's rich. He has a fit, strong body because he's rich, and he's punching down, and that would be the symbol of the show. It would be a fist punching down on people. It would be a big fist coming down. That would be the symbol on his chest, a fist coming down and to punch the little man, and that would be the crux of it. And that guy would end up in the hospital, and he would go around, you know, running around, jumping on the rooftop, sitting in his Tesla with all the expensive listening, the shit Stu had in his fucking van, all that stuff. He'd have all that equipment listening in on things, and he would disguise everything he did as justice. Okay? You don't get where I'm going with this. So He's cruising the streets of the ghetto with the fucked up windows and just looking to beat people up. He has a bulletproof suit. He's like 300 pounds, completely jacked, and he's just beating people up and telling them it's good for him. So one night he's listening to these guys, and they're like thugs that are they're transferring guns, because if you know anything about poverty, people are scared. I mean, when you're insecure, you want a firearm for safety, so gun trafficking becomes a thing. So he's listening to these gun traffickers, and he's like, I gotta take these punks off the street. They're selling guns to kids. And he's listening to him, and the one guy's like, yo, man, how's your mom's doing? Oh, she's got the liver cancer, but once I get this job done and they pay me the $4,000 for that, I'm gonna get her the best chemo oncologist money can buy. You know? So then the other guy's like, dude, that's awesome. Once I get my money, I'm gonna get my little girl, she's my angel, look at her on my phone. Once I get my money, I'm gonna buy her braces. And then Hamman's like, you're not selling guns to do that. And he just proceeds to beat their asses. And meanwhile, Hamman, because he's a billionaire, his company has laid off some 500,000 people, which triggered this ghetto epidemic. Okay, so these people he's beating up are the same people he laid off a couple months ago, and they've fallen on hard times, and they're desperate, and they're doing desperate things because they're desperate. Now, I knew this white kid at Papa John's, his name was Noah, and he cracked me up because I was like, what if you were dirt poor, starving to death, and you couldn't get a job? What would you do? And he's like, I'd go in a gutter and die. I wouldn't steal food. That's not how people work, by the way. It's not. So Hamman beats those guys up. He breaks their arms. He's teaching them a lesson about stealing guns, and he contacts him, and he's a vigilante. And then, you know, he ends up with organized crime, and organized crime's actually way harder to deal with because they're not little men. He has a fist punching down. He punches down. It's what he does. So organized crime has money and guns. So he gets into organized crime, tries to beat him up, gets his ass handed to him. They light him up with guns. It doesn't kill him. And they eventually they beat him, and they end up tying him to a chair, and then they figure out who he is, and he's like, I'll give you a couple million if you don't torture me. And then he pays his way out because he's a rich guy. Okay. And he goes back, and he goes back to his house, and it's all rich. It's like that Jeffrey Epstein shit. There are kids that are way underage running around his house, and he's talking to another self-righteous white person. And they just start talking about how the poor working class are entitled. The working class and poor class, they're so entitled. They think the whole world owes them something. Oh my gosh, they want our money. They think they can fix it. Oh, it's not. It's not gonna fix it. It's not gonna fix. And then, yeah, like Hamman's like, they're co-immiserating because they're miserable because of how they think. Not because they have money, but it's how they think. And they're co-immiserating with each other, and Hamman's like, yeah, I'm so miserable from my money. Like, they don't understand that it's awful, and it's not gonna fix your problems because it can't bring back my parents. Oh no, victim. Ah! And, you know, he's emotionally stunted. The biggest part of this is he's emotionally stunted, so everything he does is projection. He's a narcissistic, emotionally stunted narcissist, and everything he does is projection. So, this all would climax as he's beating people up, and you start learning their backstories as to why, and it's like, oh, I got laid off from, you know, Wayland, we'll just call it Wayland fucking Industries, and now, like, to support my kids, I have to deal dope on the side. Or I have 3 jobs and I still can't afford my rent and shit like that. Okay, it would be shit like that. Like, as he's beating these people up and teaching them a lesson and giving them massive ER bills, which causes them to do increasingly amoral things to survive because he's making the problem worse. But in his mind, he's solving the problem. Okay, eventually, these people get tired of the Hamman, and they're little kids. They fall for the televised propaganda that Hamman is watching, and they buy toys, and they love him, and they uphold him as a superhero. This shit's kind of like Blondie from Papa John's. and they think like that Batman's or Hamman is the ultimate superhero. Because they're kids and they fall for propaganda, and there's this big propaganda that this guy's beating up the poor and he's somehow solving problems when he's making everything worse. And it's good for the rich people he's making everything worse, okay? Because he's a distraction. He's a distraction from truth, and that's the real thing that's going on. But Hamman's an imbecile. So eventually he gets captured. We'll call the guy like Matt and Steve. They set up a plan. And they capture the Hamman. And he's all like tied up, he's in his suit and everything, and he's like, "You guys are nothing but greedy bastards. I hate the working class. I hate the poor. You're so entitled to everything. I don't owe you anything." And then they're like, Matt's like, "So why do you do what you do?" And he's like, "Justice. It's justice. I see you filthy pieces of shit dealing drugs and selling things." And then they take his utility belt from him. And they go through his utility belt. In the utility belt, he has like fucking cocaine because he gets high on cocaine. So he can sustain the crime fighting because he's no one Superman of willpower. It's all powered by drugs and his money and assets. So he's like, "You got cocaine on your belt, so you do cocaine." "I'm a responsible user of cocaine. I don't do anything stupid or crazy." And they're like, "Right. So it's okay for you to do cocaine. You don't know how to use the power of cocaine for good." He's like doing his thing. And then the guy's like, "So what's the real reason you do what you do?" And he's like, we figured out common sense. You drive a Tesla. You have all these expensive gadgets. You're crazy rich. You're a billionaire. You come down into the ghetto and you just beat people up. And then you're telling us it's good for us. And I look around here and I see all the infrastructure's bad. I see houses that are people overpaying for apartments that have leaky roofs. People trying to support their kids because of all the layoffs that's been going on because of AI and you people replacing as many people. And we have mass unemployment. What's your plan? Put them all in prison because they're not working. Because they want me to give them everything. What are you getting at? I don't want to pay taxes! So I'm gonna beat everybody up and put them in jail for breaking the law because I don't want to because I don't want to pay taxes. I hate taxes. Taxes is killing me. Taxes. He starts like freaking out, screaming about his taxes, and the guys are like, "Are you being serious?" And then they look at each other like, "You pay taxes? Hey, Matt, you pay taxes? Fred, you pay taxes? Hey, Irene, you pay taxes?" And some of these people have broken arms. They have like broken arms and their legs are in cast. They're all the people he beat up. And they start telling him their stories. And he's like, "Oh, another sob story. Boo-doo. The Wayland Industries laid me off. And then I couldn't support my kids, so I started dealing drugs. My mom has cancer, so I started stealing food. You guys are pathetic. You're the victims in everything. That's what happened." And, it gets to Matt, and he's like, "Okay, what's your story?" "I was born rich because I'm chosen by God." Everybody. He's like, "Of course." And Matt's like, "So do you think God gave you that money so you can redistribute it to the poor and stuff? How like Jesus said like it is more likely for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven." No, Jesus loves the rich. He hates the poor because they're so greedy and entitled. All of you are greedy and entitled. You are. And then he's like, "Okay." And he's like, "So what happened to you?" "My parents died! Oh no! When I was little, they were in their private Cessna, driving around in their expensive robes, and then their plane crashed, and they died! And then Matt's like, "That's such a rich guy thing, to have your own private plane and then die like an imbecile." And then Hamman's like, "What?" "My parents died of natural causes, a car wreck, but I don't go around projecting onto people, calling them greedy, entitled, selfish, jerks because I don't want to pay my taxes. I don't go around beating people up. And he's like, that's your problem. That's you. I get away with it. I'm a victim. I'm the victim. I'm the victim. And you guys illegally arrested me. You're a vigilante. And it's actually, this is called a citizen's arrest, and it's actually legal to arrest you. But if you want, you can go. And you can let me go? Yeah, you can go. We just wanted to know why you did what you did. We thought there was some real, like, you wanted to be a hero or a crime fighter. Maybe you were just on the wrong side, but now we get it. You just don't want to pay your taxes. The guy, like, they cut the zip ties off of him. And he gets in his car, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you, Matt. I'm gonna fucking kill you. I have a rule about not killing. And then Matt's like, that's funny because you killed 2 people because they had a pre-exposed medical condition that gave them aneurysms. And when you decked them in the head, their brains died because they had an aneurysm. Oh, it's not my fault. I'm the victim. And then he gets into his, like, Tesla and drives off, and he goes home and he calls it, like, whatever you want to call his maid, like Lily or some shit, or Sith. Sith! These guys, they caught me, and they were mean, and they interrogated me, and they know who I am. Oh, I gotta kill this Bat guy. And he goes to the Bat cave, hit the Ham cave, which is actually his garage. And he gets he gets a shotgun and goes back. Breaks into Matt's shitty apartment, fucking, where he's like laying in bed with his girlfriend Pam, and then he just blows Matt's head off. Boom! That's what happens! Nobody holds me to account! You guys were blaming me! You were blaming me for everything! I was being blamed! And Pam's like, you were being held to account, are you a fucking imbecile? No! Nobody holds me to account for shit! I'm entitled! And he jumps out the window with his little fucking... And then he flies away, and then fucking... He ends up going to court, and when he goes to court, he's like, you know, there's all these charges of assault and battery, evil vigilantism, that he's like, I have affluenza, and that means I'm so rich, I'm disconnected from reality. And they give him yoga classes, so he's like doing yoga classes, and he's like, yeah, that's right, I did all these bad things and I got away from it, cause God loves me, blah, blah, blah. And then Pam's across the street with a sniper rifle, and she just blows his fucking head off. He's in the middle of the yoga class, and poof, his head just goes everywhere. And fucking, they take Pam in, and they're like, you shot this man in the head because he murdered your husband, he assaulted all these things, where do you get off? And it's that double standard. And then she's like, I have poor fluenza. And they're like, what? Poor fluenza? I don't have the money to go to court. I don't have the money to do anything. I have no power in my life. And these stupid assholes keep coming in telling me that's your fault. You're not working hard enough. Well, simultaneously, they lay us off. They cut us down. They refuse to pay their taxes because that's the worst. And they have no agency or accountability in their life, but somehow they project all that onto me. So I have poor fluenza. I want yoga classes for murder. And then the judge just looks at her and goes, if I allow you to get yoga classes for having poor fluenza, we would have to let every prisoner convict in the U.S. out because they would all be diagnosed with poor fluenza, and we would have to go, oh, the reason why people are addicts is because they have mental disorders. The reason why people did these things is because they were poor and they were forced into it. If you're poor and you're running out of money and you got laid off, and I know it sounds bad, you should just die. Kill yourself because you're making society bad for everyone. And then Pammy goes to prison.